armband it because the verbiage is too much, like shortening the verbiage so they can get the play call out on time. Who are you dealing with here? This guy went to a Super Bowl at one point in his career. Sean Payton did and Russell Wilson did. So I'm honestly really baffled that things have gotten so far off the tracks so early into the season. And whatever Sean Payton said about the 3 timeouts that he had to burn in the first half, that's not all on the offense and the verbiage. This is a pretty undisciplined team as well, Tony. They have 19 penalties this season. That leads the league, 12 of which are defensive penalties. So they've got to become a more disciplined team so they can become a more crisp team with their operation overall.
Right, guys, Sola?
Well, they were good enough to have an 18-point lead. And by the way, we keep talking about the officials. That was a holding at the end of the game on the 2-point conversion. I mean, come on, give me a break. But, Tim wants to give us a math lesson. Let me give you another one on Russell Wilson. Since he signed that contract, he's going this way, Tim. He's been going down. Right now, he's all name, very little game. And Sean Payton's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer and the big-time coach. This is going to be an ongoing thing all year long. And right now, Russell Wilson has been kind of quiet. This continues, the losing and the head coach tweaking him a little bit. Wait, there's going to be a response.
In the division, Chargers lost both games so far. The Raiders are split, and so is Kansas City. Can they recover from this, Frank?
Now, I think they can, but wait. Kansas City being 1-1 is a lot different than Denver being 0-2 and losing their first 2 games at home. This team, you lose a game like that, and let's face it, too, the Commanders are an okay team. Maybe they'll be a little bit better, but that's, you're not beating a war. You're not losing to a world beater.
One more story here for an 0-2 team. Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Where was the bounce back I heard about from the panel on Friday? You're getting their mute. Joe Burrow's calf also re-aggravated. Team 0-2, just like last year, re-aggravating that. Courtney, how much of this is about Burrow's calf, and how much could it be something more?
The offense is still trying to figure its way here and decide which direction it's going to go after Joe Burrow missed most of the preseason with that calf injury. But this is certainly concerning. And you can look back at history and say, well, they started out 0-2 last year and they made the playoffs, but those weren't both division games. Since division realignment back in the early 2000s, they're the 7th team to start out 0-2 after facing 2 division opponents. The previous 6 teams didn't make it into the postseason.
Another good stat. Wow.
The biggest concern here, though, is Ja'Marr Chase. 5 catches for 31 yards. He was an afterthought in this offense, and he couldn't come down with that touchdown in the first half, leads to the short field goal. Where has he been? Why is he so uninvolved here? I think that's not just on Joe Burrow and the calf. That's on the entire game plan here for Cincinnati.
Dennis Jr.
If you're a Bengals fan, you could take solace in the fact that Joe Burrow is 1-7 in first 2 games of the season for his entire career. So they've been used to these slow starts and they pick these things up. But that calf, man, that looked to be bothering him even before he tweaked it. He didn't tweak it till the end of the game, and he'd already only had 32 yards in the first half and is 0-for-11 and past the 15 yards or more, which means he's not getting that velocity on the ball that he wants that comes from the lower body. That is a huge concern. And like Courtney said, these are division games that they are losing. They're in a lot of trouble.
Tim Calishaw, you see it that way?
Yeah, I think that's the key. They don't go into the season thinking we're going to lose to Cleveland and Baltimore and be 0-2. You can come out to other ways to get to 0-2. They also, even though they're 0-2 last year, that wasn't with a hobbling Joe Burrow. That looks scary. That can lead to other things. A lot of guys hurt their arm and their back trying to favor calf injuries when they come back too soon when they're trying to throw. So I think the Bengals are they have some serious problems ahead of them.
Frank Isola.
Yeah. And that was their first home loss since they lost to Pittsburgh in Week 1 last year. So they don't lose at home. But to Courtney's point about Chase and Burrow, here's one of the best combinations in the NFL. They really haven't done anything in the first 2 weeks. And we've seen Joe Burrow, whether it's in college or in the NFL, do it at the highest level. He has performed well in big games. There's something clearly up with this guy. He didn't practice enough. Look at him at the end of the game. You just saw the video. He's not right.
Odds makers right now, after 2 weeks. Seems like everybody's under 50% here that Cincinnati can recover to make the playoffs. Tim?
I don't think they're going to be a playoff team.
David Dennis Jr.?
I don't think they're
Courtney
a playoff team.
Cronin?
Too early to write him off.
Frank Isola.
Joe Burrow's not right. I don't think it's this year.
All right, till next. got to do a lot to get past NFL on NFL Monday, but Colorado State delivered. Except that hit right there. We have an update on Travis Hunter. Reports are he'll be out 3 to 4 weeks. That shot came on a personal foul. Of how many in this game? Personal fouls. No ejection. The heat in this game, from all the coaches to all the players, were at such a level, and how Colorado came back from the jaws of defeat. Sanders' drive moment, Shedeur Sanders, 98 yards, and then 2 overtimes in the storming of the field while being a 23-point favorite. Can you do that? Tim, what to buy, what to sell about this game and that hit and Colorado's comeback and Colorado's storm?
Well, I'm selling that the heat got turned a little too high, mainly by Jay Norvell before the game, and that resulted in a hit like that wasn't an ejection. But I'm buying everything the entire Sanders family has brought to Colorado these first 3 weeks. I don't know how long it lasts, but even if they lose, they're going to sustain something that Colorado hasn't seen in many, many years, and it's a hell of a show.
David Dennis Jr.
Yeah, I'm with Tim here. First of all, I'm selling Jay Norvell and that Colorado State, the way they play, especially beginning of the game, taking on his personality, way too chippy, and that dirty play falls on him as much as the player itself. But as far as Colorado, man, I know that they're missing Hunter. I know they have Oregon and USC coming up. But if they win one of these 2 games coming up, they are cooking with grease. And if they beat Oregon and they're going to USC undefeated, we're looking at maybe one of the highest rated college football regular season games we'll ever see.
40 Cronin.
I'm buying that Shedeur Sanders channeled his mentor and the person whose brand he signed an NIL deal with. He did go into Tom Brady mode there on that 98-yard touchdown drive, the 2-point conversion to get this team into overtime. And I'm also buying he did it without Travis Hunter. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, a 117 passer rating in this game. This only strengthens his Heisman candidacy going forward, and now we get to see against Oregon and USC. If they want to shut up any of the other doubters that remain out there about this Colorado team, now's your chance against competition.
I hear you guys, but nobody's hitting pause on the team that had to come back the way they did against a team they were favored by 23 points against. Frank Isola?
Yeah, and Oregon's favored by 21 in the next game. You know, the Shedeur Sanders, that drive at the end of the game, that was his best moment thus far. But why didn't Colorado State just go for it on 4th down? If you get the first down, you win the game. You're going to have to stop them anyway by punting the ball. But to what everyone was talking about with the hit, the referees lost control of this before the game even began. You got a Colorado State, I don't know if it was a coach or maybe a player in street clothes yelling, getting into it with Shedeur Sanders. The hit, the player should be thrown out. And why not on these unsportsmanlike penalties? If you're not going to kick guys out of the game, how about they can't play in 10 plays? I mean, you had offsetting unsportsmanlike penalties. What happens? Nothing. That seems a little odd.
As up and down as that was, impossible to look away. What a game. We'll move on. Buy or sell 2, another 0-2 to talk about the LA Chargers. Are they still feeling aftershocks from last postseason where they blew the 27-0 lead?
I'm not worried about the Jacksonville loss. The Jacksonville loss hasn't carried onto the season whatsoever. If you've seen our training camp or you've seen the way we played in the first 2 games, it hasn't had an impact on our team whatsoever. It's a convenient storyline for you and for everybody else.
David, buy or sell,
but it's
Brandon
not the
Staley
truth.
there after the loss to Tennessee.
I'm selling this. Maybe it's not the Jacksonville loss itself, but it's what that Jacksonville loss represents. A coach who's lost 13 one-score games in his tenure there, and a coach who's brought in for the defense and cannot stop anybody defensively when it matters. That's what that represents. That's what that team is reeling from.
Courtney, buy or sell Staley?
I'm buying that he's having an identity crisis, Tony, because what happened to the aggressive coach who used to go for it on 4th down more than anybody else in the NFL, and then you punt at Tennessee's 44-yard line on 4th and 1. This doesn't make any sense. This offense has scored 50 points, not turned the ball over. The 33rd team to do that in the Super Bowl era, the only team to start out 0-2.
What's that again? Frank Isola.
If he's reprimanding Bill Plaschke, I'm all for it. But let's put some of this now on the quarterback, who gets paid a lot of money. We give the quarterbacks all the credit when the team wins. Justin Herbert has to be better. He's got to find a way to win one of those
Tim
first.
Kalishaw.
Hold that home.
I think Staley's right when he says the players aren't thinking about it, so it's not affecting him like that. But he's wrong, and as David said, this is who they are. They are very capable of blowing leads and being what we consider the Chargers to be, and they do it over and over.
That's the thing. It's an amazing – they have the same game. Their win probability every game looks exactly like their logo, and then it goes right back down again. Tim Kalishaw.
Tim knows that.
Frank
Man.
Isola. Thanks for your time. I'm talking to America here. David Dennis Jr., Courtney Cronin. Showdown next. Time last night, the New York Giants found themselves outscored 60-0 in the 6 quarters of the season, but then they came back from 20-0 down and 28-7 down to have a comeback of comebacks to beat Arizona. Saquon Barkley sprained his ankle in this one. MRIs today. They're on the short week against San Fran Thursday. You know his availability is going to be in question for that. David, is this a back-to-life win for New York or more concern after squeaking by Arizona?
We're starting with good news on Daniel Jones. No other quarterback in NFL history in the second half has had more than 250 yards, 50 rushing yards, multiple touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and no turnovers. Bad news, that's what it took to beat a Cardinals team that is actively trying to lose games. This should have never been that close, and they're going to lose to the 49ers on Thursday and be 1-2 anyway.
Courtney?
They look different in the second half, which is very promising for the adjustments that they made. The 21-point comeback, great, but there are a lot of holes still on this team. Lack of pass rush, the offensive line, and, of course, the Saquon injury just barely helping them avoid.
Other than that, how was the comeback, Mrs. Lincoln? Okay, guys, I got to say it. Masterclass in stats today from both of you. Get an extra point. We'll move on. Feels like we spent the whole day talking about 0-2s. How about some surprise 2-0s, huh? Whether you believe in them or not, Atlanta Falcons starting the year 2-0. Haven't been there in a while. Tampa Bay Buccaneers starting the year 2-0. And the Washington Commanders 2-0. Who, if any, has earned your trust so far, Courtney?
This is not the same Washington team of a year ago, Tony. They would have folded had their backs been against the wall, down 21-3 with 9 minutes remaining in the second quarter. To rattle off the biggest comeback in franchise history, in the franchise in 33 years is a pretty big deal.
David?
That's the same Commanders team that almost blew a Hail Mary, lost a Hail Mary to that Denver Broncos team that's not good. I'm going to go with the Falcons. Bijan Robinson is a superstar. They had the most impressive win of the season so far for a 2-0 team.
Split the point, and we'll move on to Showdown 3 because there are bad beats and there are whatever happened with the Rams and Niners last night. It was a 10-point game with 4 seconds left. How often do you see teams do what the Rams did? Kick the field goal so they only lose by 7? The spread was 7.5 in some places. Fantasy owners are losing their minds. Let me ask you, David, should NFL fans question that kick?
They shouldn't question their kick. They should question their hobbies. This is why you don't gamble on a scripted sport like the NFL. Gamble on professional wrestling like I do.
Gordy Cronin?
This is what some will say is the best coaching decision of any coaching decision in week 2. Sean McVay, whether he knew the spread or not, he was not asked about it after the game, so he gets
How
off
was he not
scot-free
asked
here.
about it
Bettors
after the
make some money.
game? Even if he was just going to say, I wanted some extra reps for a special team. Courtney Cronin, 30 seconds of FaceTime.
You'll remember I was talking about Denver's penalties, 12 of which defensive fouls this year. Kareem Jackson not on the right side of any of that. He was not suspended for his hit on Logan Thomas, a helmet-to-helmet contact in the game last night. He also injured Jacoby Myers, was out with a concussion for week 2. He's playing from a different era. You can't have these sorts of hits going forward. He should have been suspended. He should also receive a hefty fine.
That's our time. We'll see you tomorrow.